I am here today with Theresa Zip, and Theresa has always loved art making. She got 3/4 of her BFA in art from two different schools, then switched to art education. And she began teaching in 1983, back when technology was the hand-cranked purple ink spirit duplicator. She remembers her first foray into word process exams when students freaked out that they wouldn't be able to recognize familiar content in the weirdly professional-looking format. Teaching for over 20 years, mostly high school and some elementary and junior high sprinkled in, it was 2 years teaching art in a maximum security juvenile detention facility that convinced Theresa to make the shift to study art therapy. For the past 8 years, she has had her own private practice, and for the past 6, she has focused exclusively on working with children and youth referred through her local Children's Services Department in Edmonton, Canada. Her studio, The Big Picture, is a modest basement hideaway chock full of a wide range of raw materials for making art. It is a tiny wonderland of exploration and empowerment for clients and art therapists alike. The flip side of the perks of being independent, hidden away, and working one-to-one also has its drawbacks. Among them can be feeling of invisibility, self-doubt, and professional isolation. While nothing can replace face-to-face mutual support, Theresa has found valuable encouragement and community in several online art therapy related groups. So welcome, Theresa. I'm so excited to be able to chat with you this afternoon. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Gretchen. Thanks very much.
So the first question that I've been kind of starting each of the chats with was if people remember, and sometimes it can be hard to remember like specifics, but just maybe generally, like if you remember how you first maybe used the internet or social media in relationship to the field of art therapy.
Okay, well, actually, I remember very well coming back to school and how things had changed because I did my university in, the late 70s, early 80s. And suddenly, like, research was amazing. Like, you could just, you had access to things from all over the world. And younger students were showing me how to do things like, use databases that I didn't really know how that all worked, and actually probably still don't. But things like being able to call up a whole bunch of articles and save them on a little USB key was just shocking, to be able to do that and bring it home and read them on my own computer. That kind of thing just didn't exist before. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was quite a big change, just using the internet.
Do you remember anything like specific to art therapy that you first either stumbled upon as a student when you were in training?
Well, I studied at a school that was quite new then, and I did a lot of kind of background research because they weren't affiliated with a larger body yet, and it was really new for them. And I just remember doing a lot of research with the American Art Therapy Association and the Canadian Art Therapy Association and thinking, wow, like, just couldn't have done this. A few years ago, it would have been totally different.
Mm-hmm.
I had actually thought about studying art therapy many years ago, and I found this big envelope of different places that I had asked them to send me information, and that was probably the mid 80s, late 80s. So it was before internet, and everything was more effort and more, but in some ways it was more intentional. There was a real conscious effort to put to things. So mean, it had its good things too, but boy, it sure makes it easier to really research and get behind the scenes with, with your. And then when the social media sites came in, I mean, I joined, let's see, well, I look back, my first email account I had in 2001.
Okay.
And that was more for traveling and keeping in touch. I didn't really see it as, all that it could be. And I didn't use it that much, and there was a thing about, oh, it's going to be so expensive. Every time you click, it's going to cost you $1 and it's going to add up to your rent in a month. And, there was all that kind of thought about it. So, I mean, I didn't really have the reason to jump right in. But then when I did, and again, it was more moving away from where I had lived for quite a while and keeping in touch with people. And it was just so easy, And then that was just when Facebook was coming up too, But I joined Facebook, I think it was 2007. I wasn't really early with that either. It's kind of like, oh, this might not last. I don't want to go through the hassle of passwords again. And,
yeah, that it's like a passing fad or just won't last to be replaced.
Yeah. So, and because of my age, I didn't grow up with that. Like they say, this one, I forget his name, this author, but he says that if you didn't grow up with the internet, you are always going to speak with an accent when you talk about technology. So just get used to that, You are a newcomer in this land. And so that's what I am. I thought when you first asked me, interview me, and I thought, oh gosh, with the amount I know, I don't know. But then I thought, well, why not?
Exactly.
And a woman in my late 50s, and it has just helped me so much, especially, I think, the social media.
Yeah, what I really admire, and the questions that I have next kind of reflect on this, is that you have really been using social media for quite some time, through to connect to others within the field or, seek information, and have been very, I feel consistent in that, almost not super early on, but pretty, for quite many sort of years.
Yeah. And I think part of that with me was the timing, because it coincided with me finishing my master's degree and going out on my own, building my practice. So suddenly, I mean, I just needed all this information. I needed all this inspiration and encouragement and support. And, it's just so different to kind of try and arrange with people face to face in your community that you don't even know.
Yeah.
And so it was just a necessity thing that made me think, oh, look at this LinkedIn. My gosh, I can't get over this. All these different groups and, signing up for them. And it was just wonderful. It was, because the early days when art therapy was not really super well known around here where I live, although there were art therapists, but there's kind of this theme, I think, of isolation compared to the relative density, I think, of art therapy and art therapists in the States. So it was just so great to be able to kind of connect with kindred spirits. And I had so many needs, needs to just hear people talk about, what they were doing with methods, materials, what people were doing about private practice, how, some of the really thorny ethics problems. It's wonderful to have something up, a question up, and just having people chew it over from their different perspectives and even different areas of the world. It's just really, I don't know, I feel like it made me a lot more solid because there was so much, and still is, but I mean, especially at that time.
In that transition.
Yeah.
Yeah, the diversity and the different voices and places that can contribute.
You're never on your own. I don't know how someone could do something on their own. Something like private practice, you have to have all these hundreds of people that you can draw on, and talk to and discuss things with, and very specific things. And I always found that the people who are posting, and even like me posting a question, what would you do about this kind of thing? It really brings up, I don't know, people's really thoughtful, considered responses, especially on those kind of forums. It just, I don't know, I think in a lot of ways it taught me how to communicate better, because I was always quite introverted. And there's people who would say, oh, Theresa, you are not introverted. But really, basically, it's a very strong kind of bent. And so in a large group, I would really find a million ways to not speak up, and so I didn't really get used to having a voice. I was really happy watching everybody else, and then I just remember the first time I posted on LinkedIn, I read my response, and it was something, I think it was one of those, there was this long thread about, is glitter good or bad?
Oh yeah, I remember that one. Yes, yeah. Is it? Yes, yeah. That's one of my favorite ones. Yes.
Yeah, and it just brought
like friend or foe.
And it just brought up so much discussion, and some of it very profound, for such a funny kind of silly question that we were having fun with. But I just remember thinking, well, why don't I write a post? Why don't I actually just do it?
Like contribute to it, yeah.
And then I thought, well, this is not a big deal, like this is, and, if I say something a little off, I mean, people, they'll probably point it out, but they'll probably be very understanding, So it's just such a great way to get a lot of feedback. From lots of different angles. With some of the art making groups that I've joined into, some of the other forums, it just seems to really bring out the best in people. It's like conversations that you'd love to have in person, but people would talk over each other, and people would forget, and people would, jump to another topic. And this is one that is it's very considered, and the pacing is really quite amazing, really knowledgeable people, who I've read their books, and they're engaging in these groups as, as just another person in the group, It's pretty magical, I think. And for students to get really used to hearing their own voice and to chewing things over, and to kind of welcome diversity. There's not just this party line that you have to toe, but we can really we all have a different angle on this, and we're the wiser for, sticking with the thread and really hearing it out.
Yeah. Have you experienced like any challenges in regards to like social media, or sort of using online, either communication or things that have, been difficult as far as barriers or things like that?
The thing that comes to mind right away is when a client wants to, friend you on Facebook. Or follow you on LinkedIn. So that kind of thing, I mean, it's the boundaries there, the professional boundaries and ethics of it. That has been again, kind of groping around, but talking with other people and, when have you done that? Or do you ever think this is okay? Because the courses were behind, hey, when we took ethics, this was around the corner still, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so once it arrived, boy, it really arrived.
Mm-hmm. It usually is behind, technology and everything moves so quickly, or people think, stuff won't sort of last. So creating policy and procedure and things like that is, it's always not just within art therapy, I think, in other mental health, like professions as well.
Yeah. And I know in education too.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's, people grappling with that. And
mm-hmm.
it's really an important issue.
It is. Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole spectrum really of, what is acceptable when
mm-hmm.
or never.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, I don't know, it's interesting. I've followed some ethics forums, for that, and it helps because you can't possibly think of everything yourself in your one mind, but when you get maybe, I don't know how many, 100 minds and a few people speak up with their experiences, you kind of get this it's a really dimensional, knowledge. It's like, this intelligence out there.
Yes.
That becomes kind of concrete in a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think this is more of my reflection sort of on that, because I think the ethics piece and the boundaries piece, very important, also would maybe create hesitancy among art therapists, mental health professionals, helping, professionals because of that, to stay kind of away from social media or that type of engagement in fear of having to deal with that. But now it's very hard to sort of work around being completely not involved in social media. So how do you navigate that world, professionally and ethically and safely for yourself, because there's huge benefits to that, and then also with your clients, as far as making sure that stays ethical and professional as well.
The other aspect of it, I guess, now shifting from pure art therapist career kind of stuff, I guess you might say that, professional stuff, but to your own self-care. That's an area that I found the social media to be really important for me. And the art making groups. It's wonderful to spend a day or an afternoon with friends making art, but it's so hard to arrange, even if you do live in the same city. And actually my art making friends probably, there's a few, but they're further flung, and so I don't know, the art making groups have been really nice because you can just open it up when you want to. If it's the end of a long day and you don't really want to socialize, but you really want to post something you did, it's a nice container for that.
Yeah, it's kind of on your terms and your schedule and energy level, or, how you want to engage.
Yeah. And it's really, again, kind of introduced some kindred spirits, that, other people who are in the group or on the forum who, just the way they posted something, some of the choice of words or something, and you just think, and you answer them back, and it's just little things usually, but I have a few enduring kind of friendships that have gone that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually reached out to, well, there's a couple of people, but one who I really needed some supervision on a specific topic that I knew she was really well versed in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, I don't know, it enlarges your community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, being able to, again, to access and approach or to work with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've already sort of touched on this question, but thinking about how social media has contributed to professional companionship, which I believe was a word that you sort of used, that phrase, which I really like, professional companionship for the art therapy community. Which you talked about the isolation piece and being able to reach out, and also a source of self-care. Are there any other sort of things that kind of stand out in regards to that sort of connection?
Well, when you're actually going to physically be somewhere, like, oh, I'm going to this conference in your city, or something like that, it's really a nice chance to meet up and talk about things, even more.
Yeah, see face to face in person.
Yeah. So it's, I that's something that I've really liked, whether it's going to, like, I've only been to a couple of the American art therapy conferences because our Canadian dollar is just pummeled. What can I say? But it's been really nice to sort of plan with a couple of people, like, yeah, you're going to be there too. And I actually found my roommate for the last.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Found her on social media too. And it just, I don't know, it makes things like kind of flow. There's that flow to it that's so great.
Yeah, and that's nice too, like being at a conference or a city or place that you're visiting, and maybe don't know like a whole lot of people, but able to connect with people online prior to going, so there's not this sense of, I don't know, like isolation even there, that there's connection already, even though you may have not met that person like face to face. You still know them from online.
Yeah, and it's surprising how much you do get to know people online.
Yes.
Like, I know we're always cautioning the kids about never meet up with someone you've met online.
Yeah.
But you do, like in these forums, someone that you pick up on, you really like their way of responding to questions or to other people. And you do, I mean, as an adult, you've got this other baseline of knowledge to draw on that kids don't. But it's just so, I don't know, it really is a gentle way of getting to know someone, and you don't have to be their best friend, You're just having a nice, polite conversation about something that you both really care about.
Like-minded, on the same page, familiar, especially with art therapy, because, outside of the field, sometimes it can be hard for people to understand or know the struggles, that art therapists can face.
Yeah, it's really true.
Yeah.
And it's also like it becomes such a interconnected sort of network of roots and branches, because then when you're at a conference and someone's presenting and you think, wow, I really want to learn more about that person, and you go and they've got a website and they've got more information there, and turns out they're doing a webinar or a training or something, and it's been really helpful that way, and like the TLC, Trauma and Loss in Children Institute. I think I heard about that through you on LinkedIn, and it was really helpful to go there. I don't know if you have to go there, but I did for the first part, and do the 3-day training, and then just to keep up my certification with online courses, and that's great. And now, like, ATA has online education for the last little while, and I've taken some of the courses and they're great, but they're small, they're bite-sized chunks, and they're from people that you've heard speak already, and you think, yeah, I really like where he's coming from. I want to, I want to know more. So it's a really organic way, I think, of learning and evolving.
Yeah.
As a professional.
It doesn't have to end there on site, or when the presentation or whatever has been presented and then it's over. It can continue on past that for those that maybe weren't able to attend, or like you were saying, want to kind of continue like learning or accessing what they're presenting on or offering in the future.
Yeah,
the internet makes that so much easier to do and cheaper, to get that content.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I mean, it's great to be able to go to things in person and, conferences and all of that, but sometimes it's just not like affordable, to travel, the airfare, the lodging, the registration, all of that, and there's things where you can, engage online and get continuing education and still have that connection, instead of just not having it at all.
When we did the Google Hangout with the
software. Yes, I do. I was thinking about that before I signed in for today. I was like, I remember Theresa and one of your was it another therapist, right?
Yeah.
Who kind of joined you, and we did like a group sock making session with people that I had here.
Yeah, and it was nice, those kind of connections. I think the artist trading cards, I think that's been really nice. It's the combination of the virtual and the physical.
That's one of my favorite things. It bridges sort of both worlds, like the virtual and then the physical together, to have something that someone you may have only met online, or, you only see maybe online mostly, but you're able to kind of have something or hold something that they've crafted with their own hand.
I love having them around, and I've got some art that I bought from Lanny Garrity. Like, I've got different, I like to have people's energy in the room with me. I find that it's kind of the spiritual aspect of having, having people's energy with me to do good things, to support, good decisions, and to be real, to be honest, to be human. They're like touchstones, I think, for that.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I love that. Yeah. And how it can kind of live on and carry on beyond, ourselves. Like, we make it for, a swap or a particular individual, and then, maybe that gets passed on to someone else who sort of needs that sort of message or sort of moment, and how there's such power in that.
They really do have an energy that's nice.
Yes. So you mentioned LinkedIn as a platform that you use, particularly with like discussion groups. Any other platforms that you engage in?
I have joined like the Dirty Footprints studio.
Okay.
Like art making groups. Is that what you mean? The ones that I really do use, there's some Facebook groups that are really great.
Okay.
And there's like the LinkedIn groups, there's so many. I tend to, I'm very comfortable with my art aspect, I guess, of being an art therapist. And I guess because I was an art teacher for over 20 years, I really learned a lot of different things, different media, and had already a sense of how they are to engage with.
Okay.
So that it's more for my self-care. But I've really, like with the LinkedIn groups, I've really zeroed in on some of the groups for like trauma in the residential. There's so many like specific areas of, like foster care, treating, different issues in the population that I work with. So I think actually it's kind of changed shape where I've gone more to those for the specific conversations there. Sometimes I would watch YouTube videos of somebody talking about their work, and that was really cool. Just when I needed to kind of zone out, and I don't watch TV, so it's kind of my TV. But just, I don't know, it's really interesting. Or to hear somebody, like you can hear Bessel van der Kolk talk about, some specific thing about yoga and how it affects the brain or something. And that I just find really nourishes me. So it's not like I'm loyal to any one site. I'm, I don't know how you'd say that. I'm thinking of some funny metaphors, but but there's places that I really follow. Like I love the art hives movement.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's very active, like social media. Yeah.
And, so the drop-in community studio is something I've always really, it's kind of been my North Star that I keep moving towards in little ways, but I'm not there, and I'm not even close to it. I'm working sort of one-to-one. But I use aspects of that. They're kind of embedded in how I approach art therapy, I guess. So I really enjoy following a couple of their Facebook pages.
Yes, because I see a lot of their things on Facebook mostly, and I can link it sort of as well to, information, people can also like check it out.
Yeah, and they have a really great website, like just arthives.org, that gives you a lot more in-depth information. But Facebook's so great because everybody's on it.
Yeah, I wonder the stuff with like LinkedIn, I wonder if stuff has shifted over into Facebook a little bit more, in a professional kind of sense even too, just because, everybody is on Facebook, and maybe people are feeling more comfortable with professional wise, like on Facebook versus LinkedIn. I don't know. It's just interesting how things like shift.
I know for me, I do have a distinction between what I would bring to a Facebook group maybe and what I bring to a LinkedIn group.
Okay.
Like I would ask the tougher questions, I guess, on LinkedIn, the more professional, again, like the privacy, confidentiality, not that you're mentioning names, but you wouldn't want some, because I know the kids I work with, they can get into anything. Well, on
Facebook, if it's like a page or even some groups, depending on the setting, I mean, it's public, so anybody can like go to it or stumble upon it. And if there's a comment that's been made, it's like connected to you. Whereas LinkedIn, there's a little bit more like privacy, because groups can be closed. I mean, some unlisted and or listed and open, but I don't know.
I think Facebook, maybe there's this illusion of privacy with the settings. But then, if you have your settings really set low and then you're trying to post something for somebody else and they can't see it, so you open up more. And I don't know, I guess that's kind of guided me. And no, there's things I wouldn't talk about on Facebook. And even personally, because I always think, well, you
just know where, even if you have pretty tight security settings, I mean, you just never know like where things can end up or how they can be saved, or, whatever you put out there. I mean, it's what everybody says, nothing is 100% secure. So you just never know.
It's true.
Yes.
Especially when you speak with a strong accent. And you weren't born with this stuff. It's something that you learn from the outside in. And I actually get a lot of inspiration from that metaphor. Like I was just thinking, I don't want people to think it's not a disparaging comment about having an accent, because I do work with newcomers to Canada too. And I'm very inspired by how there is this openness to learning, and there's an urgency to learning and to making it work, to being practical. And there's also there's almost a poetic interpretation that comes out of a bit of a language barrier, So, and I guess that's part of why I said, sure, Gretchen, you can interview me. I'm not a natural at this stuff, but I really like it. And here's how I've kind of worked with it, and it's really worthwhile.
Yeah, and benefited from that, and also, contributed and helped other people as well. I mean, I know that I was just saying before we started, just the support, that I've received, from your postings and sharing, and the work that you've done, has been very, I don't know, just almost like priceless, it's, very, very happy and grateful for that. So we give and receive.
It's a great container, even though it's so porous,
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being able to chat with me and, answer the different sort of questions that I had, and be okay with doing this interview. I think it'll be very helpful for others to sort of learn from as well, and hearing your experiences. Is there anything that you'd like to kind of leave us sort of with, that maybe we didn't touch on, or sort of final kind of thoughts or recommendations?
I actually did just think that the one thing that I see, and I do some supervision with some students, and I really recommend just not reading, not just reading through on these sites, but to reach out.
Okay.
Share your voice and reach out. If there's somebody who you really like what they said, reach out to them and say you did, and say why, And sometimes, I don't know, even writing my thesis back, it was probably 10 years ago. I mean, I just reached out to this young woman. I said, I just loved what you said about quilting, about your, and she was in Chicago, and I just was so overwhelmed with my thesis. And she said, well, yeah, I did this first and then I did that. And hey, do you want to I'll send you a copy, And it was just so nice to have someone just respond like that, So I think it's just the reaching out. It's the other step that sometimes people don't do, that you get a lot from reading through, but if you just respond and say why, I don't know. I've always found that people are so great, even people that you wouldn't approach because they're such experts, or, celebrities or something, It's really, I don't know, it's really a very accessible platform, I think, the whole.
Like moving from more of that passive, maybe just taking in the information, to activating sort of that action,
Activating is a great word for it. It's, you don't have to be thinking you're an expert too. You just have to ask the question, or
reaching out.
So, that's it.
That's a good recommendation. Thank you again, and best wishes with all your work, and I'm sure I'll see you online somewhere. Definitely. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, Gretchen, and thanks for everything you've done to sort of bring things along to this stage, because you've really been a lot of places really supporting in a very well supportive voice. So
Thank you.